welcome back to my channel. On this page, I talk about technology and money, and sometimes I talk about trending news. And this article that I want to talk about today, I'll definitely try to keep this live under 30 minutes. I know it's a little bit early, a little bit earlier than I usually do a live. Uh, so yeah, this one caught my eye. So I wanted to come on here and talk about it, especially with what I see a lot of content creators on both YouTube and also over on TikTok, just across the platforms, talking about um, women and money, college educated women, especially college educated Black women or women of color, and how their contentions, some in favor, some in not, of women earning degrees, college degrees. And I know there are some countries where women's education is also being restricted in different ways. And I follow a lot of money. Not a lot. There are several podcasts that I listen to. One of my favorites, I believe I talked about it on here before, is the Women and Money podcast. That's Susie Orman's twice weekly podcast. And there are a couple of other money and financial YouTube channels that I've talked about both here and also on Instagram. So I saw this article today with some new data from the Pew Research Center, which is interesting. And as a result of that, Bloomberg did a interesting article that I'm going to share as well. So if you're watching the playback, please do like the video, and also please share it, liking the video, as you telling the algorithm that you find the information interesting, helpful, and engaging. And it also encourages me to continue creating content that you all find helpful. I do see Selfish Love. I'm glad you're here, and welcome. All right, y'all. So I'm going to share my screen. And also, I'm gonna try to keep this under 30 minutes. And as always, like I tell you all, please don't believe everything I say. Okay, please don't believe everything I say. Please don't believe everything you hear any YouTuber, influencer, internet personality, or even in person, what they talk about. Please always do your own due diligence. I like to leave references to all articles that I talk about, so people so you can go and read the article yourself. And then if you want to explore more, that can do that. Please, you can do that. Please don't ever just take what I say or talk about and just run with it. So this is really interesting. So Bloomberg is one of the news outlets that I follow. I'm on several of their mailing lists. I follow their insights about not only money, but I follow also their insights about economics. I'm definitely not an econ major. I went to school for nursing. So economics as a whole is more than just money and supply chain and things like that. But I do enjoy Bloomberg's economics um, newsletters, because they do it in bite size, and they have a couple that come out each day, and they talk about like getting you ready when the feds are about to increase the rates, or when the feds are about to release new rates around like mortgage data. And they let you know what's happening on like the World Economic Forum, like that platform. A good bit of it I don't understand, but they write it in such a way in their newsletters, it's enough for me to follow along. So they released an article earlier today. Today is Thursday, April 13th. And I just want to share it. And I also have a link to the actual Pew Research, the data itself, because I know some folks are really big on not just reading or hearing about what the journalists write about. They also want to see the data and the research, and I totally understand that. I always like to know like statistical methods and how people make the insights that they make. So I'll share that as well, both in the description box, and then I'll briefly go over it as well here. So Bloomberg wrote an article, and it is based on new Pew Research. So that's PEW, that United States or U.S. women now make as much or more than men in half of the marriages. And what really caught my eye about this was not only college educated women, but also Black women are more likely to out earn their husbands. Now, I identify as a Black woman, and I will say as a disclaimer, this article and also the Pew Research data they make it clear that they're focusing and talking about like cishet marriages, not same-sex partnerships. They explicitly call that out. And I want to say, as I'm getting into this, people model and do their marriages, should model and do their relationships that's best for them, not based on what someone else says. But it just caught my eye, especially with all different influencers talking, influencers talking. I've seen it on YouTube, I've seen it on Instagram, I've seen it on Twitter, that women's college degrees don't mean anything. Women getting their education means nothing in relationships, that there is no value, that there is no inherent value in women becoming college educated, whether for the woman herself or for her families. One um, YouTube platform I like to follow. I've talked about it, I believe, here before. I like the Broken Wallet, and there's a couple others, but another one is Black Women Making Money, and she really she talks about different talks about wealth building, not only for Black women but for all women. But this article here from Bloomberg, okay. So it says in almost half of the opposite sex marriages in the United States, women now earn at least as much or more than their husbands. Nearly one third of wives earn roughly the same amount as their husbands, while the woman is the primary or sole breadwinner in 16% of marriages. And again, that's from the Pew Research report that just got released today, and I'm going to share that here in a moment. So combined, that's a record high. So that's a real key, significant key right there. That's a record high and a threefold surge from 50 years ago, when 4 in 5 households relied primarily on the man's income. So they do single out a couple here. This is a couple. The wife is a public relations professional, and when her husband, at the beginning of what happened like 3 years ago with the pandemic, her husband got laid off, and they made a decision as a family that he would stay home with their daughter, because it just made more sense financially. Because with her, the income that she was bringing in as a professional, it was not only enough to carry the household, but with him going back to, once he was able to find work, the work that he was finding was like entry level salaries. And with childcare, the cost of childcare is very expensive. Y'all don't need me to like deep dive into that. It's astronomical. And so with the cost of childcare, it just made the most sense for their family for him to stay home with their daughter. That's what she wanted, the wife wanted, that's what the husband wanted. And so they made that decision as a family. So Bloomberg and the Pew Research Center goes on to say that the decline in husband-led households, so this is financially, so not the decline in husband-led households as in like the man is the head of the house, like in like a term, but in terms of finances. But the decline in that takes place not only as more women enter the workforce, but also as they graduate college at higher rates than men, which often leads to better paying positions. That's why when I see personalities talk about women getting an education, or like college degrees don't matter, I just ignore it because college degrees do matter. Your education, along with how you manage your money, it can be a significant wealth building tool for women and for their families, and as a result of that, their children. Okay, so anyway, it goes on to talk about the pay gap. So I've talked about it here on this channel before. There's been a lot of research how there's still the gender pay gap and gender inequality. So they talk about it a little bit here, and it says in those heterosexual marriages where both spouses make roughly the same amount, the median salary is around $60,000. College graduates and young women, as well as Black women, are more likely to be in egalitarian partnerships. Y'all had to go back and Egalitarian. I was like, ooh, that's a SAT word. I had to look that up. So if y'all didn't know like me, and I'll be honest, 2 hours ago, I was like, ooh, I had to remind myself what egalitarian means. It means like an equal partnership, like equal in terms of either finances or the labor in the household, etc. But this is what, because again, I identify as a black woman, and there have been so much on the platforms over the past few years about unequal finances unequal finances in terms of who brings in the money. But it says here that black women are also more likely to earn more than their husbands, as are women with a 4-year college degree, women's ages 55 to 64, and those with no children. So that being said, the gender pay gap continues to affect income, even in families where women is the breadwinner. So to me, that reads like, even though the woman financially is the head of the household, um, that pay gap still has an impact, even when she is the breadwinner. So when the wife is the sole provider, the family income tends to be almost half of that when the man is the only source of income. Dual income families with a female breadwinner also make slightly less than those with the male head of household. I think I'm about halfway through the article, and I'm going to rush through it a little bit because I do want to go directly to the Pew Research Center website, and just highlight some things that also caught my eye and why I found this new research so interesting. And it says that's in part because married women make roughly $15,000 less a year than partnered men. So that's talking about the gender pay gap and how that plays into it. And then also the pandemic also made matters worse for many women, as some were forced to leave work to care for loved ones amid school shutdowns, child care shortages, and other family issues. Just for a moment, y'all remember, does anybody remember, if you're watching the playback or if you're watching live, does anybody remember that CEO, that lady who owned I think she owned a tech company. She was the CEO. She always also was the founder. I think she had like 15 employees. This is right at the start of when everything started happening in 2020. And her husband, I think he either left his job. He wasn't working, but she ended up having to shut her entire company down because he told her that he was unable to care for their 3-year-old daughter. That article. I saw that article on so many major news outlets and platforms. I remember that article had people talking for days because it was just like, this one, she had to shut her company down because her husband said he just either he could not or he would not care for their 3-year-old daughter. And he also wasn't working either. He just essentially in the article was saying that it was just too much for him to care for a 3-year-old, even though he was not working. So I remember that. Yes. Okay. So back to the article here. Let's see. Okay. So the U.S. women are not fully back to the workforce. Working wives also still carry most of the unpaid labor. Y'all, I have seen so many articles, and it's really interesting when especially like if how the algorithm works, like on TikTok or whatever. But I see the way my algorithm is set up. I see a lot of things about money. I see a lot of things about relationships and leadership and things like that. But I see a lot of things about relationships, both from single women and married women and divorced women and widowed women. And what is really interesting, and I'm just talking about my own feed, my own algorithm, and the type of things that I see. Because they say your For You page is for you. But it's really interesting to hear the married women or the divorced women talk about even if they're working or contributing equally financially to the household, like to the bills and like the investments and things like that, they're still doing the most of, if not all of, like the housework, the housework, and making appointments and taking the dog to the vet, things like that. So in equal marriages, instead of saying egalitarian, I'll just say equal marriages, women spend nearly 12 hours per week on caregiving and housework compared to about 7 hours for their male partners. They also tend to dedicate less time to leisure than men. Now that's not me saying that. That's what the Pew Research data is saying. So in the relationships, this is again cishet relationships where both partners are financially equally contributing. women are still doing more of the labor and more of the caregiving. I'm doing a quick pause here. Yeah, so we got a comment. Yeah, so you have to ignore them who don't believe education matters. Education definitely does matter, and it does for sure make a difference. Yeah, it definitely makes a difference. Okay, so that's the end of the article. And now let's go over to Pew. Let me just do a quick time check because again, I was going to try to keep. Okay, awesome. We're just at 18 minutes. Okay, cool. So here's the direct Pew Research Center website, and so they have call outs over here along with the graphics. Uh, so Black wives, college graduates, more likely than otherwise to be an equal and breadwinner wife marriages. So they have a graphic here that's really interesting. And so I'll do my best to interpret it as I see. So they have like all wives, and then they have it segmented by 4 different races. So white, black, Hispanic, and Asian. Then they have it segmented by age range, whether they're not from the United States or foreign born, and then like their level of education, whether they have children, etc. So again, because I identify as a black woman, my eyes typically first tend to draw to data and statistics is about that is related or similar to me. So you see, it says here for Black women where the let me scroll up. Sorry, y'all. Okay, here we go. So you can see, and I like, is this fit? Are these numbers in thousands? It doesn't say. But at any rate, so I will just say 50. I'm assuming this is percent because there's not like an X and Y axis here. But you see here for Black women, where it's equal marriages, you see that excuse me, in equal households, you can see for Black women where they're contributing more, like financially, and then it's also higher for Black women either being the primary breadwinner or the sole breadwinner, even though that they are married. Interesting. Okay. So let me go ahead and scroll on down. Oh, I wanted to go to the main page. Sorry, y'all. Here we go. Yeah. Because the whole research report is actually quite long. Here we go. So just hitting on some highlights. Here we go. So far fewer husbands are the sole breadwinner in their marriage these days. And it was really interesting, and I think it was somewhere within this research report again because it's really long, where they said not only are far fewer husbands the primary breadwinner, so fewer husbands are the sole breadwinner. However, more men preferred being the primary or sole breadwinner, even if they were not. So they weren't actually in that role, but they preferred to be in that role. And I will say, just because one person or the other makes more money than the other doesn't whoever makes the most money doesn't mean that that person is better than the other person, right? So again, I just believe in whatever works for your relationship is what you should do. They said breadwinner wives are still in the minority. Earning arrangements um, Earning, earnings arrangements within marriages differ by demographics. So we just talked very briefly about that. This was interesting. So in equal and breadwinner wife marriages. So again, equal and breadwinner wives. Equal meaning the wife makes as just much money as her husband, or breadwinner, the wife is the primary or sole um, earner in the household. The husband spend considerably more time on leisure activities than the wives. That was interesting, right? So, the wife is bringing in more money, or she's the only one bringing in money, but she's still spending less time on leisure activities than her partner. So they're working hard in their careers, but also in the house with the domestic labor, but also um, not being able to engage in, for whatever reason, engage in leisure activities, whether that's with their friends or just self care and things like that. It says they talk a little bit about what the public says. The public thinks married men and women have different ideas about which spouse should earn more money. They talk about that. When it comes to what's best for kids, most Americans think both parents should be equally focused on work and home. It goes on and very detailed, but I won't go all into the details. Again, I'll leave the link, but I will go to let's go all the way up. They had a table. Here we go. They had a table where you could see all of the just like key points. Here we go. It's right here on the right. Let me make that bigger. Hopefully y'all see that okay. Let me flip back to my other screen to make sure that's big enough. Okay, yeah, it is big enough. Oh, okay, and got a couple more comments here. Oh, selfish love is saying the CEO should have left him. That's so freaking selfish. My father was my primary caregiver when I was a toddler since he worked nights and my mom worked days. Yeah, so it's interesting. So what selfish love is talking about, if you're just now joining us, we're talking about the article from Bloomberg saying how now in the United States, not only are women the more higher primary or sole breadwinner, they're also still, and the data is showing that it's not Bloomberg saying it, is the data from Pew Research saying that the women are still carrying more of the domestic labor. But we were talking about earlier about the CEO of that tech company. This was about 3 years ago. She owned a tech company. She had 15 employees, and I remember that article about her was on like Madam. It was on if you Google it, I'm sure you all will find the article. But she ended up having to shut her entire company down and let go all of her employees because they had her and her husband had a 3-year-old daughter, but because her husband, who was not working at the time, told her that he was not able to care for their 3-year-old daughter. I don't know if he had something else going on, but the bottom line is what the article says. What he just said, I can't care for our 3-year-old daughter. It's too. I believe he said it was too much for him, and he wasn't working. So anyway, so that's what we're talking about. We got A Rob. Hey, A Rob. Hey. All right, so just wrapping up. Let me do a quick time check, okay? Because I wanted to keep this under 30 minutes. So the key takeaways here. So Pew is saying wives are gaining economic influence while carrying a heavier burden at home. And then we saw that in the research where it was saying even when women are bringing home just as much money into the household as their husbands or more, or when they're bringing in more money than their husbands, the women are spending 12 hours on the domestic labor in the house in comparison to their husbands who's only on average spending 7 hours. So yeah, that's a lot. So husband and wives have roughly equal earnings and a growing share of U.S. marriages. And again, because I identify as a Black woman, this point jumped out to me. Black wives, college graduates, more likely than other wives to be an equal in breadwinner wife marriages. That's why I don't listen to people who say college education, college degrees don't matter. They for sure matter when you're looking to build wealth for yourself and for your family, or even for like if you don't have children, for like your nieces and nephews, or if you have godchildren. It really does matter. So in equal marriages, wives and husbands tend to earn about 60K each. 60K is a pretty good salary. To me, that's good money. So dual provider marriages tend to have higher household incomes than sole provider marriages. So to me, this is my interpretation. It's saying, when both and then if you missed it, this Pew Research is based on cishet relationships. They didn't talk about same-sex partnerships, and I'm calling that out because they called it out in the research. But it makes sense if both parties are working and contributing to the household. One would expect the household to have a higher level of income. In egalitarian marriages, husbands spend more time on paid work and leisure than wives do. So again, women are working just as hard outside of the home and working inside of the home, but the wives aren't taking as much leisure time to themselves. Self-care is so important. About half of Americans say they think most men would prefer to earn more money than their wife. So their wife is bringing in more money, but they would prefer to make more money than their wife. But do men say that? I don't know, y'all. I've never been married. I just think it's interesting. Do men like verbally say that to their partners to say, hey, I want to make more money than you, and I wonder how that dynamic plays out within the relationship. I don't know. I would imagine that I'm just speculating again because I've never been married. I would imagine it could create some contention if the wife is making more money or she's the only one making money and the husband wants to, but is unable to for whatever reason, unless there's some things that could be worked out between the couple. But okay, so more than half of U.S. adults say society values men's contributions at work more than what they do at home. That's interesting. Okay, so the majority of Americans say children are better off when their mother and father both focus equally on their job and taking care of the children and home, and wives who are the primary earner in their marriage spend more time on caregiving and housework, less time on leisure than their husbands do. Now, ain't that something? That is something. What is that song song from like the 70s? I bring home the bacon and I cook it too. Okay, maybe someone will remember, but yeah, about being a hardworking woman. But yeah, y'all, that's it. That was really interesting. And the reason why I'm sharing it is because if you missed it at the beginning, I said I was sharing it because I've seen different YouTube channels and then other social media platforms. Number one, talking about how women getting college degrees are like discrediting and saying that your college degree does not matter. I just totally wholeheartedly don't believe that. But then also about women and their ability to make money. So if you made it this far or you're just joining the live and you have a comment, please feel free to leave a comment below. Please also like the video. What do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about how it's not just YouTubers or TikTok people or just people, on Twitter, say talking off, just giving their a personal opinion is actually being reflected in the data that um, women are, especially Black women and college graduates, are now out earning their spouses, their male spouses, again, based on this research, in marriages and what that means, and just the things that we're seeing happen in just different segments in terms of like building wealth, in terms of childcare, in terms of even if you think about an extension of that, and now I'm just positing like an extension of that, like the divorce rate, right, and how that maybe is playing out with more women being educated, especially Black women, and getting their degrees, again, starting businesses. We see what Goldman Sachs is doing with investing billions, and that's with a B, not with an M, investing billions in Black women and their businesses. I think to participate in that Goldman Sachs program, I think the businesswoman has to have, I believe, at least like $25,000 in sales, I believe. I looked at, but anyway, so you see what's happening in terms of divorce rates, in terms of women earning money, and as well. So, all right. Let's see. Check out a few of your comments and then we'll wrap up. I think I see Selfish Love says, I think I see why more women are out of marriage and children. Wow. So that's interesting. So you think women I'm just asking, you think women are opting out of marriage and children because they don't see the value in it, because they're earning just as much as their male partners, or even if they are getting married, not getting married, having children. But yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because they have options. And again, that goes back to, I don't listen when people say, and I encourage young women to get there. Well, I encourage all young people, or anyone who's interested in getting an education, to get that. If you want to learn about a topic, definitely go back. And if you don't have the money to go back to school, there's a lot of things that you can learn on YouTube and different platforms like LinkedIn for free. So I think education matters no matter how, quality education definitely matters. AB says, LOL, only fools with no degree think that while using all social media platforms that were developed by people who likely have a degree. Yes. Isn't that something, right? Or even if they don't have a degree, they maybe have some college education, like they did some type of school. They did some type of schooling. And even if they have no degree, like they did not go to any type of college, community college, they still had to learn some type of skill, right? So there was still a level of education there, whether that's learning about business, about marketing, about finances, appreciation and depreciation and things like that. So, a few more comments. Selfish Love says it's not about the money, but being the breadwinner and having to do everything at home is a bit much. It is. It is, and again, I based on the way my algorithm is set up on different social media platforms, it's interesting seeing women who are divorce. There's a divorce or widow talking about the division of labor in their relationships. There is a woman that I follow on TikTok. I love her feed. Now I'm based in the Carolinas, and so is she. She's based in Rayford, North Carolina, and she owns the Southern Elegance Candle Company. Southern Elegance Candle Company. So you can buy her candles on her website, but you can also like buy them on Amazon, and she also sells them in stores. But she talks a lot on her page. Like she talks a lot about like marketing and running a business and things like that. And she's divorced. And she talks a lot on her page. Her TikTok page is D Sean CEO. So like the letter D, the name Sean, so SHAWN and CEO. I believe that's how she spells it. But it's really interesting when she shares her story because she talks about business a lot, but she also does. I don't know if she meant to be like a women's empowerment, but she talks a lot about encouraging women in their businesses and empowering them. If they're afraid to like leave their relationships or if they're having issues. But she is divorced, and she talks about how when she was like first starting her business, she was still married. She was married for like 20 years, and it wasn't until um, she got divorced that her business really took off because she was able to like really put her focus and her energy into her business and build it into like a multi-million-dollar business. She's just very encouraging, but as part of that, she talks about in just different TikTok videos, she just talks about not only was she like, because before she like quit her regular job to like build out her candle company, but she was working a full-time job during the daytime. Then she was building up her candle company, but she was also doing everything at home too. So what Selfish Love is saying, it's not about the money, but being the breadwinner and having to do everything at home that is a bit much. It's a lot. You're right, Selfish Love. From what I understand and talking and hearing from different women, it could be a lot. And Pew Research says, let's go back to what the data says. It's not just me or um, other talking heads saying that it's not too much, but they even say it here. Let me pull up that statistic again because I just found it a little bit, which means it says like women aren't partaking in self care as much as they perhaps as they should. I know some folks say, oh, self care is not important, but it really is. So it says even here that wives who are the primary earner in their marriages spend more time on caregiving and housework, but less time on leisure than their husbands do. So I can imagine that could just be a lot, right? So you're bringing in the majority of these women in this case are bringing in can y'all see that? Oh, let me scroll down. Sorry about that, y'all. That should be better. Bringing in the majority of the finances. And it's just being a lot and doing everything at home because, like as the research says, as this research report says from Pew, that even where both the husband and wife are bringing in the same amount of money, so right, both are making say $60,000, the woman is still spending 12 hours of domestic labor in the house, whereas her partner, he's only spending 7 hours on average. So a few more comments and then we'll wrap up. Let me do a quick time check. Oh, okay. I don't want to marry. AB says I don't want to marry because a struggling man is an educated woman's Achilles heel. Oh my God. I'm not laughing at you, but the comment is just it is yeah, right? Yeah, because it can be. And you know it's interesting that you say that AB because I have seen and it's in my friendship circle, in my girlfriend's friendship circle, and then just listening and sitting at the feet of other women, and then also women, older women as well. If that their partner is struggling and she's educated, she's established, she's working hard because she's having to help him so much, how much of a drain financially, emotionally, etc. it can be, and not for everybody, right? It may not be an Achilles heel for everybody, but I know in my personal experience where it has been an Achilles heel for some women. It can be a lot. It can drain. It's a lot of emotional labor and a lot to do. And yeah, yep, and we value degrees. I definitely value degree. I encourage all people to either get their degree or to get some type of education, have a skill, right? Because it definitely can take you a long way. So we're gonna wrap up here, and if you're just now joining, I just ask if you don't want to donate to the Cash App, that's fine. Liking the video is just as valuable as a Cash App. I appreciate it. It goes a long way. It helps this content get out into the algorithm. Is you telling the AI that you find this information interesting, engaging, or helpful. And then number two, it encourages me to continue creating content that you all find interesting, and when I come across these things, I'm just excited to share because I know other folks would be interested as well. And also, I wanted to thank folks who have been sharing my channel. I think in the last like week or so, I think I've gotten 20 more subscribers. So I appreciate everyone. I know I talk a lot about technology and healthcare. I don't always do money topics, but I appreciate everyone who shares the channel with your friends, whether they're nurses or not, or working tech or not, or that you all find value. I appreciate that, and I'm hoping to reach 700 by the end of the summer. So I thank y'all for that. Honestly, I do. So today's topic again, just in wrap up, we just covered Bloomberg's article that just came out this afternoon. Like it just came out not even 6 hours ago, talking about U.S. women now make as much or more than men in half of marriages. I mean that college educated and black women are more likely to out earn their husbands. It's not now people can say, well, it's not just what we think or what we feel. It's data, numbers, facts, etc., coming from accredited research centers, and they have the data to back that up. Well, I appreciate everyone who tuned in today. I'm glad you all are here. Hope everyone have a good rest of your week. And then one final comment. AB says, I really don't know any relationships where that doesn't show to be true. I don't either. I don't either. I have seen it. I know of some relationships I've heard uh, where it could work, but I just know for some folks it could just be a drain. And even the data says that what Pew said is that even when the men were making less than their wives, they still preferred to make more, even though they were not making more. And how. And I just wonder. The data didn't talk about this, but I wonder how that would play out within the relationship. And again, just because one person makes more money than the other doesn't mean the person who earns more is more valuable or a better person. It's just interesting to me. All right, y'all. That's all I got today. I hope y'all have a good rest of your evening. Please do like the video and share it if you found this interesting. And I'll leave a link to everything in the description box if y'all want to dig deeper into that Pew Research report, because it is very long, and I didn't even hit on all of the things it talks about with black women out earning their spouses. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye, y'all.